Hello everyone, I'm your host Gyro. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to very easily and without the use of any add-ons set up your HEALER UI in World of Warcraft in patch 10.0. This is a pre-patch to Dragonflight. Maybe some things will change, but UI I think is pretty solid, and in all honesty I think the World of Warcraft engineering team has done a tremendous job putting it together for us. And by definition, if you are not running add-ons, it means that your client, your game client, is running most efficiently. Your memory is reserved for the game itself, so you don't need to run any add-ons. Just before somebody points out the obvious, I'm not talking here about any other convenience of life add-ons. Things such as Deadly Boss mods, DBM, things such as recount to count your damage, or details, whatever it is that you're using. Perhaps you still would need those add-ons, but those are not must-haves. Those are more convenience of life and kind of ease of play add-ons. As far as what you need, like I said in the thumbnail of the video, you don't need any add-ons to make this healer work in its rudimentary and reasonably effective form. Let's get started. You press escape and you enter edit mode. This is the new mode that's been added in World of Warcraft Dragonflight, and you can see that in this central box here you can select which bars would you like to add to the screen as editable, so they are pre-configured there kind of in the background of the game if you like, but until you tick the box somewhere here, you do not see it on your screen, so that you can move, resize and do whatever you want with this. So everything that I believe is absolutely mandatory, and I'm a minimalist, so I do not have everything imaginable, I only have what I believe is necessary. So you tick those things. We need your target and focus frame. We need your party frames, that's your group. We need raid frames, that is for LFR and other activities, and I'll show you how to configure this individually. You need your cast bar, you need your extra abilities, you need your possess bar, whatever that means, that's situational bar, and you need your talking head because there is a lot of narrative in the game, and that's just that's just what you need. And you probably need to also configure vehicle exit button, because there are often taxis and other kind of stuff that you sort of need to exit from the vehicle. You also need things like obvious things such as campaign window, which is movable, objective tracker, also known as objective tracker, but it's, as you can see, it's kind of a mandatory window. You do not have it configurable here, aka you will always have it. Same thing goes with your chat frame. So as far as I'm concerned, let's address the obvious things first. So map, you always have a map. Objective tracker, you always have objective tracker. Chat frame, you always have chat frame. If I'm not mistaken, other than maybe, no, I think that's it. I think other than this and talking heads, you cannot turn off talking heads, map, campaign and chat. You have to just find positioning for those. What is also tiny bit disappointing is the fact that talking head, campaign, map and chat are not editable in terms of sizing. So you can edit in terms of placement, but you cannot edit any other criteria of these windows, unfortunately. So that is where I guess standard UI is not as flexible as, say, Dominoes. I have an ancient video on the channel that is out of date. I'm not updating it. It is for Dominoes add-on that used to do all of this for us before the UI in World of Warcraft became so flexible by itself, but it allowed you to edit these kind of things also. So that is one limitation that I'll call out straight away, but I don't think it's a make it or break it one. I'm fine with it personally. All right, so how do I play, my friends? Well, this is a healer UI or a caster UI. So as you can see, my layout is saved as healer. What do I think I need? So I have myself in the middle here. I have my own health and my own mana slightly elevated here to my eye, like kind of the line of sight, I suppose, where my eyes are. Here in the middle I find it better, because for healers and for spellcasters you always have your enemies or your targets a little ahead of you, right? One would argue that I could have even lifted it a little higher further up, but that's up to you. That is up to you to do that, okay? So I have it kind of around here. As you can see, I'm not being very precise with positioning, but it's roughly good. And grid, I think, is tremendous, and I'm surprised that World of Warcraft UI team did not turn it on by default. I think you absolutely need to turn on grid For your alignment of the windows, visual symmetry, I think we work much better as human beings with symmetry, because even if you don't realize it, you love symmetry. Your brain loves symmetry, okay? Snap allows us to put things a little closer to these corners of the grids, right? See how if I move it closer to the corner, it sort of snaps to it. It makes it a tiny bit easier for me. So that is all that means, all right? Now, so this is as far as the frames are concerned. Frames are in front of me. I know that where I'm at if I'm focused on the battle or I'm focused on what's going on. Target frame is tremendously important. You will be either targeting the boss, like say the enemy, to help with DPS a tiny bit, or you'll be targeting probably your tank. As a healer, you'll be targeting your tank. Focus frame is also very important, and you can reset the focus by setting up a macro, which would be /focus percentage sign T, which basically means focus my target. You select something into the target, you press a macro like that, and that target will always be over here. It might be that you are targeting a tank or a party member, and here is the focus that is a boss, let's say in a raid or some other circumstances. That's situational. You can choose for yourself how you want to set it up. As you can see, frames such as this one, such as character frames, they can change the size of the frame. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. I do not think, for me personally, I needed to make it larger or smaller. But you can also see that there is a focus frame which allows you to use a larger frame, such as similar sized as your character. I do not believe that that's required because it's not so necessary, and I think it's better for a healer at the very least to not worry about that. Cast by is pretty rudimentary. It allows you to also increase the bar size in case you really would like to see your spell a lot better. You can always make it a tiny bit better. I don't think that that's a particularly guide-worthy element, and I don't think that you need to make it, bigger or whatever, but it doesn't matter really too much. Now, at the heart of the whole construct is action bar number 1. Action bar number 1 is where your all abilities are going to be dumped by default. It's where the game starts dumping abilities while you have empty slots on your action bars, and you start opening these abilities as you level up. So action bar number 1, I think that it needs to be centered. For me, again, I love symmetry, right? I sometimes, as you can see, I haven't done it here, but sometimes you can increase the size. I like sometimes increasing the size of this bar, which in this particular case, again, remains to be seen. But you can see that we can probably increase the padding between the icons a tiny bit, and we can increase the size of the icons if we want to, if you really wanted to make it more stand out to you, so that things pop out a little bit more for you. That's up to you. Number of rows I set to 2, and number of icons I remain at 12. This makes it really nice and kind of punchy in the center. I personally can see everything, and this is just my UI. Now action bar 2 and action bar 3 are again symmetrical, and these are secondary abilities, as you have guessed. Logically, I like to separate my abilities between, let's say, defensive abilities and, let's say, offensive abilities if it's a spellcaster. And in case of a healer, I usually I separate it logically here into my defenses, how I defend myself, or for example help myself move around, such as mounts, over here, and secondary abilities that I will use to heal the group or buff a group or do something else. So you have to have certain purpose to your bars, is what I'm encouraging you to always think about your layout of the UI. I'm not pretending to be an expert in UI layout, but I don't think I'm doing too badly in terms of minimalism and not doing too much. Alright, you let me know in the comments down below if it works for you, and if you do something substantially different to me, because it's always good to learn from each other. And that's in essence all the obvious things out of the way. You just place the bars, you configure them individually, you make them as big or as small or as, whatever you want to do. If you also if you tick the box always show buttons, what it means is that even if a certain cell here in your bar is not preoccupied by a certain ability, it will still show even if it's empty. But if you untick that box, then if, let's say, something is not here, it will disappear optically from the bar. I think, again, from symmetry, I kind of don't mind even seeing empty cells, even though for me, as you can see, everything is being used up. Now, a few other things. So let's talk about the party frame. Party is very, very, very important. So party by default by default will not have this box ticked that says use party style party frames. It will use your standard frames. Yeah, they will look kind of like this. And I don't think it's visually efficient, and it also by default makes it vertical. We use party frames, and I use horizontal layout, as you can see here ticked. And that's about it. And then you can also change frame height if you like it a bit more symmetrically tall, let's say, because I have it a bit more rectangular and you might want to have it more square. That is really up to you. And I think we all have our own visual preferences, and some have certain mild visual impairments, or again, let's call them advanced preferences. So that is really honestly up to you, my friend. You can choose what you want to do with this. If you feel like making it even more efficient, you can even, you know, give it a border, let's say, so that it stands out for your visual preference a bit more. Final thing that's probably worth mentioning to you, and that is not obvious maybe, is how this RAID frame is configured. Well, first of all, like I said, you need to tick the RAID frames before they appear. Yeah. Then you obviously select this block like you would select any other bar, and you would select the RAID size that you would like to sample configuration for right now. Is it 25? Is it 40? Is it 10? You will see exactly what it is. Yeah. And you can choose then for yourself, would you like to use the frame width wider, smaller? I know that I will probably at some point need to heal LFR. Right now for me it's a very secondary purpose. I think I'll spend 99% of my time in groups. That's why I focus on the party frames rather than the raid frames. I choose this here, the settings of groups, that I'm combining the groups rather than separating the groups. Yeah. So let's say separate groups. We'll make it look like this. I think we don't need to exit the edit mode for you to see that it's a lot less visually efficient. I like to combine the groups like this. I think it's a lot more neat. And if I'm not mistaken, if I'm missing something, please let me know in the comments down below. I'll be happy to talk to you about this, but that's as simple as it is. So this, well, obviously don't forget to save this. And if you're creating a new layout, you can always create a layout here, or give it a name, or save your existing layout. You can see I have a healer, I have standard caster, and I have a melee. In case you were wondering what's the difference from melee and caster gyro, well, in melee, to be honest with you, my friend, everything is exactly the same, except these frames of the target and me are lower, because I don't need to look ahead so far. I like things a bit lower, and I like to clear out the battlefield for myself. So these secondary action bar 2 and action bar 3 are lower, and these frames are lower. So I leave a lot more empty space here to move with my mouse and melee around. That is the only difference that I'm having. Now, very importantly, so somebody also asked me what add-on am I using for healing purposes. So these are just bars. These are just bars. What am I using for healing? I'm also proud enough to say, my friend, that for many years, even not being a pro healer, I'm simply using mouse over macros. Again, I do not want extra add-ons without a need. Why? Why would I need add-ons when a mouse over macro can work perfectly well? Let me show you how I set it up. I'll give you an example just using one particular ability, because everything else is set up exactly the same way. You press enter to start typing something in the chat. You press slash and you type macro. Macro window, the ancient macro window, not resizable, 2004 World of Warcraft UI comes up. And let's go into Tormi, who is this character, who is my healer specific macros. And you see that I have a whole bunch of them set up here. Let's take a look at our one renew that is on the map to action bar slot number 1. It's a very simple macro. It's by default casting the attempts to cast a macro to whatever is under my mouse. So mouse over. And it also checks for condition that help can be provided to this entity. It's not an enemy. Yeah, it's not an enemy. That's when it will try to do a renew. Then secondary condition here, so semicolon, and secondary condition is like if nothing is under mouse over, I will just simply assume that your target might need help, so I will try to renew that target. Again, it's again efficient, rather efficient. Finally, and that's kinda unnecessary, I agree with you, it's kinda unnecessary. You probably can combine these two secondary conditions into one, but I didn't do it, doesn't matter. And the final condition is simply if none of the previous two are met, another semicolon, it will just simply do a renew on whatever your target is with no extra checks, with no extra conditionals. That's it. This is the simplest way to heal. So you can see that there is a different faction character druid flying around right now. So if I mouse over this Sophie right now and I try to renew, obviously the mouse over succeeded but help failed. That's why this conditional probably went all the way to just default renew, which by default, if you don't have any target, healed yourself. And you can see that I'm healing myself. But if I was mouse overing over this NPC, then this NPC would probably be healed, but it looks like I cannot interact with that target. Maybe it's disabled. If there was anyone of my faction or someone in my group, you would have known that it's working. You can see that I'm using exactly the same thing. This is an old macro, by the way. I should probably delete this. It was just an experiment. I have a prayer of mending macro. Same thing. Check if I can help, check if something mouse overs, and I can then do a prayer of mending. Otherwise, it prayer of mends myself. That's about it, my friends. That's as simple as my UI is, and that's how I heal. I hope this helps some beginners, because obviously advanced players probably have a more advanced and more elaborate setup. Let me know if you have something else. I'm all for minimalism and efficiency. That's the most important things for me. And I hope that you found it helpful. If you did, give it a like so that more people can see it and enter the game in Dragonflight without too many barriers or fear of failing or just being a noob or being inefficient whatsoever. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be speaking to you again about something else, Dragonflight, different classes, reviews related, sometime soon. Bye for now.